Red State is at its best when it combines the power it has at the national level to organize and motivate activists with the local knowledge and the citizen activism of people at the local level. And many of you are involved in that. It's no news to you, you already know this, but as we all realize, the federal government, of course, is growing bigger and bigger, but where we can often make the biggest impact is locally, either at the state, the county, the city, or the regional level. The issue I'm talking about today, high-speed rail, is both a national issue, but it's also a local issue. In fact, it's being debated in Colorado as we speak. It all started with, of course, President Obama, who decided that he was going to have a $1 trillion stimulus package in 2009. A lot of it was going to go for shovel-ready jobs, remember? And even Obama had to admit, well, there aren't any shovel-ready jobs, and we didn't create many, which is why we have the long-term unemployment and the lowest labor participation rate that we have now. This has been the slowest recovery since 1949. Much of that money, about $10 to $15 billion, was earmarked for high-speed rail. Now, let me make it clear. I love trains. I've always loved trains. I grew up partly in Europe. I have European relatives. I live in the Northeast Corridor. I take the train from New York to Washington almost every week. I like trains. Trains often make great sense. Trains are part of our history. Many of us have a nostalgic attachment to trains. To this day, I remember with great fondness the ride I took on the California Zephyr through Grand Junction to California from Denver many years ago. But trains, as romantic as they are, also have to make economic sense if you're asking the taxpayers to pay for them. And what we saw with the Obama administration's high-speed train set was it didn't make sense. Within a year of it passing, the governors of Ohio, Wisconsin, and Florida, all new Republican governors, said, even though the federal government promises they're going to pay 90% of this, we're going to be on the hook for long-term losses because the ridership predictions never bear out. So they dropped the trains. One state, and you're going to guess which one it is, one state, which never found a federal program it wouldn't take money for, no matter how foolish, decided to take the federal money. And that state was, yeah, you got it. Governor Jerry Brown is in his second incarnation, and he loves boondoggles. They're his middle name. So the California voters had in 2008, the year Obama got elected, by 53 to 47, which is pretty close, they approved $8 billion in bonding for trains. Since then, it's been 8 years. The cost has gone up to north of $80 billion, which, by the way, is 40 times the annual budget of Amtrak. 40 times the annual budget of the entire passenger rail system today. Lots of long stories here, but in the end, they had to start building something by the end of last year or they would lose all the federal money. They had to build something. They couldn't build in Northern California because the environmentalists were suing. Couldn't build in Southern California because the cost of drilling through the Tehachapi Mountains was too great. So they had to build somewhere. They decided to build in the Central Valley, in the middle of nowhere. And I'm partly from the Central Valley, so this is not a slight on them. The train is going to go, the first stretch is about 30 miles, and it's going to go from Madera, that bustling metropolis of 31,000 people, to Firebaugh. Population 863. You can look it up. Firebaugh is a lovely spot on the road. I have nothing against Firebaugh, but the traffic between Firebaugh and Madera is not going to be great. Now, I think ultimately this train thing is going to be, a disaster. It already is a disaster. Unfortunately, the lesson has not been learned by everyone. Colorado is debating, CDOT here is debating, 2 high-speed rails, one from Fort Collins all the way to Pueblo, $15 billion, one from DIA, Denver Airport, all the way to Eagle County, $15 billion. Speed between 90 and 150 miles an hour, and of course there are all these benefits. But it's going to be $30 billion to build both sections. I doubt that will happen, but it's being debated right now. But the most active debate on trains is in Texas. In Texas, which is a very red state and a very free enterprise state, they've decided they need a new tactic. Rather than go to the taxpayers, the Texas Central Railroad claims, we can build a high-speed rail from Dallas to Houston with only private money, not a single dime of taxpayer money. It's going to cost only $10 billion. Well, already they've privately told investors, well, you know, we're not going to take any taxpayer money, but loans, on the other hand. Ron Kirk, the former mayor of Dallas, former Obama administration trade official, has told investors and told the public, well, we may apply for federal loans to build the railroad. There's been a lot of opposition to this railroad, one, because a lot of people don't think it'll be built, or if it is built, it'll be a section that is, you know, from whatever, Bug Tussle to Waco or whatever, and that's not going to help much. The other problem, of course, is eminent domain. Texas is a very private property-oriented state, and Texans really resent the fact that under one plan, there's one stop between Dallas and Houston, otherwise it just goes straight through. So what's in it for the rural counties? One county, Grimes County, has already said, we don't think you have the power to declare eminent domain and buy up properties to build your railroad, crisscrossing our counties. We're going to wait till the courts rule that you have eminent domain power before we let you build anything in our county. So it's going to be tied up in litigation. My view is this: I'm fine with high-speed rail. High-speed rail is wonderful. I love having the European taxpayers subsidize my high-speed rail travels in Europe. I would be happy to have it here. And if we could completely redesign the train corridors between New York and Boston and New York and Washington, we could have high-speed rail, and it would take about 50 years to build. I don't think high-speed rail works in this country at a cost that we want to pay for it, especially since the ridership projections are always way off, usually by a factor of 5 or 6. And if you actually believe that you will only have to charge $90 to take the high-speed rail from Los Angeles to San Francisco, I have several bridges in several states that don't exist that I can sell you. So in my view, if somebody wants to build this and actually has the money, they can do it. But show me the money. Show me the money, and I don't think they can, although I wish the Texas people, in theory, well. All of this goes back to the old saying that you've heard from Milton Friedman: there ain't no such thing as a free lunch. Well, there's ain't no such thing as a free choo-choo train. And we should recognize that. The time has come for us to realize we lose credibility every time we sign on to a project that frankly is for the upper middle class or above. It's for their convenience and their business schedules, and that we ask people who have median incomes or below average incomes to pay for it, who probably will never use it. This is what has fueled the rise of candidates like Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders: the sense that the system is rigged in some way to generate benefits to people on the top end of the income scale, whether it's people who want the benefits of free trade, even though I'm a free trader, or whether it's people who want to benefit from very fancy airports that the average person doesn't use very often, or high-speed rail, which is frankly a luxury good, especially since we already have a couple of things that serve people very well. Southwest Airlines is a high-speed transportation system that is 5 times as fast as Amtrak, often much cheaper, and the infrastructure is relatively limited other than the airport. It's called the air. It goes through the air. And you don't have to have eminent domain, you don't have to buy property, you don't have to have rights of way. You fly through the air. Now, Southwest Airlines makes money doing this. The other airlines make money doing this. Frontier makes money doing this, providing a good quality service in most cases for a reasonable cost. Why do we have to have taxpayers subsidize something that people aren't willing to pay for or invest themselves? It's that simple. So my view is trains, yes. Subsidies, no. Show me the money. And I'll make a prediction here and now. In California, We're going to have a museum, an outdoor museum, in about 3 years. You'll go out, way out in the middle past Fresno, turn left, go down to Firebaugh, and there'll be this hanging elevated railway that's about 25 feet off the ground, and it will stretch off into the horizon, but where you're standing, it'll just stop and just hang there. And around it will be this small little exhibit showing what the train would have looked like if it had been built. By the way, using technology that frankly is already 20 years out of date, because by the time you plan this train, by the time you actually build it, the technology has moved forward and you may want to try something else. You know, Elon Musk, whether he's accurate or not, wants a hyperlink. He believes you can actually build tubes and whoosh people from San Francisco and Los Angeles in 45 minutes. And he claims he can do it himself privately. I wish him luck too, and I hope he puts up the money for it. Although Tesla, not so much. We'll see. But you'll go to this museum and you will see that the 1,500 employees who are currently working at the California High-Speed Rail Authority wanted to keep their iron rice bowls in their jobs, and they couldn't bear to turn back the federal money because it would go back to Washington for other projects and they wouldn't have it. So they decided to build this Tinker Toy set in the middle of the Central Valley Desert, which is a desert now because of the drought and the fact that the feds have turned off all the water. And yeah, it will have probably employed 2,000 construction jobs for a year and a half, and it will leave this incredible monstrosity. How many of you know the poem Ozymandias? You know, it's the monument to the king in the desert. How do we remember Ozymandias? What are his monuments? And it's all set in a ruin in the desert. Look around you, here they are. That's unfortunately what we're going to have with the California High-Speed Rail project. And the way to stop this in other states, whether it's in Colorado or in Texas or anywhere else, is if you have a great idea, it should be good enough to convince people to finance it privately. Show us the money. Thank you.